As you know, I did pass my exam, and I was very excited about that. And I found out that after finding my sponsor, the first thing that he said he wanted me to do was to build a giant hood. Now, typically, with many true accipiters, hawks, and true falcons, as in the peregrine or the prairie falcon, you typically hood them with that typical hood that you see that covers their head. I probably should explain that the purpose of the hood is to actually keep the bird calm and allow the bird not to be stressed out. Sometimes people think that you're being cruel to the bird by putting this hood over his head, but in actuality, it's just keying into their own instincts. When it gets dark, a bird of prey, a lot of birds know to get perfectly still, because in the night, if they're moving around, other nighttime predators like owls can catch them and kill them. So when you put the hood over their head, it darkens the atmosphere for them and the environment, so they notice that it helps them to stay calm. Now with red-tailed hawks, which is what I'm going to be trapping, their behavior and their temperament, typically you don't have to have this hood over their head. But you do need some way to transport them from home to the hunting grounds or wherever in a way that they'll keep them calm. So you create this, what's called a giant hood, which is a box. My box was about 2 feet wide by, don't quote me on these dimensions, but roughly 3 feet by 3 feet high, something like that. I'd have to measure it again, it's been a while. And the whole inside was painted black. So it's completely dark in there. It has a little perch where the bird can stand on. So he said, build that. And I said, okay. And I built mine out of wood. I didn't want it to be too heavy. And I don't know, I'm not saying that I'm a great visual artist or anything, but I do have kind of an artistic nature about me. So after I built it, I spray painted it all bright green with a little pattern. And I have a CNC router with this computer thing will carve wood. And I carved out this bas relief hawk, and I glued it on the front and everything. And when my sponsor saw it, he was like, ooh, really cool. And I was like, oh, thanks. When I got out to his barn, I saw some of hymns. It was just like, very practical. It's a box. It works, nothing too artsy about it. And he was like, yeah, I know you're in theater. I'm a farmer. He goes, he teaches agriculture. Maybe I hope he minded me saying that. And he's like, yeah, we make fun of you theater people. I'm like, okay, whatever. Anyhow, I made my giant hood, and he was pleased with it. He said it would work just fine. I'd actually, even before meeting my sponsor, I got online because I thought I needed an actual hood, the typical traditional hood for my bird, and found a piece of software that you would generate a hood pattern. And so once you knew the dimensions of your bird's head, you could create an actual hood that would fit your bird. So I kept visualizing theoretical birds with certain measurements in my head because I didn't have a bird. And I started making hoods to practice making hoods before I even knew what I was doing. So that was another thing I was doing in preparation for all of this. But the important things, after my sponsor said, stop making hoods, you don't need those, and I made my giant hood. You have to have everything before the inspector will come out. So I had to make what's called a mew. Now, typically, traditionally, mews, I understand, are about 8 feet by 8 feet by 8 feet, roughly. Usually slanting down to maybe 6, slanting roof. But I did have this old garden, a raised bed foundation that I had, and it was about 6 feet by 6 feet. And I talked to my sponsor, and he says, based on the wing spread of a red-tailed hawk, that should be just fine. And it would certainly, there's no set size as long as it is comfortable and safe for the bird. So I decided to use that as my beginning structure. And I'm not a carpenter either, but I started buying 2x4s and sheets of plywood. And step by step, I would take pictures and show my sponsor and the like. And eventually I got it made. One thing he told me in particular, he says, George, he says, one of the mews that I made, I felt like the windows were too large, and the bird would see a passing interest and would fly up on the window and beat its wings and things unnecessarily. And so I don't think you should make your window quite as large. Why? Because I have ducks and chickens running around my yard, and he didn't want me to unnecessarily have to upset the bird or upset my ducks or chickens. Another interesting thing that sometimes I think people who don't understand falconry are concerned about is when they see a mew and they see these metal bars on the windows. It looks like a jail or the old circus cages or something with those steel bars, and they can think that's being very cruel to the bird. In actuality, it's not. You don't want to use chicken wire or any kind of wire that the bird could catch its wings and feathers in, because that would damage its wings. And so the idea, they have studied raptor birds and how they clutch, and by creating these bars that are vertical, the bird can reach up and grasp, but it will kind of slide down and won't be able to hang and beat its wings against the wall and the like. And so it's actually for the safety and for the health of the bird. My window was pretty small. He says, you're going to be, he asked me right off the bat, to digress back when I first met my sponsor, he'd asked me, how often do you think you're going to hunt during the week? And I said, well, I've kind of done some research, and I'm now semi-retired. I have a lot more time than I used to. And so I was hoping to be able to go hunting at least 3 times a week. And he blurted out, that's perfect. He says, that would be great. If you can do a minimum of 3 times a week, I mean, he says, my concern is the bird getting sunshine, getting out and being able to be exercised and do what the bird is supposed to do. You're not supposed to just keep the bird in the mew like it's a cage in an aviary in some zoo specimen. Falconry is about actually hunting with the bird. And so if you can do that, I'll be very happy. And I was like, should work out great. So, yes, I have this very small window because I didn't want the bird to be able to see on the ground where the ducks and chickens are walking around. It can see the sky, it can see the trees, it just can't see the low-level birds, so it would be upset. So my sponsor came out and looked at it. Looks great. When it came, there were some other things that you need. You have to have a scale, some way to weigh the bird. You have to have the leather, what's called furniture. There are anklets that will be snapped onto the bird. There are jesses, leather strips that will go through those anklets. These jesses are used to control the bird. You can hold the jesses themselves, or certain jesses, when the bird is traveling, will have a leash attached to them. So there's different types of jesses that are attached to the anklets depending on what you're needing to do at the time. So I had to have the jesses, the anklets. I had to have a digital scale. I had to have a pan of water for the bird to be able to bathe itself in, and that would go on the bottom of the mew. The bottom of my mew was laid down with pea gravel. It's easy to clean, it's good on the bird's feet, and it's a nice level type of bedding. I bought a large, what should you call it, a planter type of thing, a large tray, and about that deep, and it was about that wide, and we put it in the bottom. Typically, especially during the winter, birds of prey really don't bathe an awful lot, but if they need to, they can. They don't even drink a lot of water, but if they do need to drink water, obviously you need it there for them. They get a lot of their water from the meats that they eat. But I had to have a water dish, a large water dish. It had to be large enough to fit the length of the bird, so it could splash and bathe itself. Let's see now. When it comes to some of these things I'm mentioning that were required, my sponsor said, George, we want to make sure that you really want to do this and that it's something that you're enjoying. So for the time being, I don't require you to spend a lot of money. I have a lot of these things. So I will lend you some jesses or help you make them. Don't worry about all of that. Please just focus on getting that mew ready, and I'll supply you with everything you need to get you started since you're an apprentice. I was like, thanks. Eventually, I had everything set, and I said, I think I'm ready. I said, I hope I have everything. And my sponsor says, George, don't worry, it's going to go just fine. And I'm like, yeah. I'd looked at a lot of YouTube videos about, people going through their inspections, and certainly when you read all the federal regulations and all the specifications and the things you're supposed to know, I didn't know what they were going to ask me. I mean, did I have to be, to any verbal statements about how knowledgeable I am in relationship to the equipment I had? I just didn't know. And I mean, when you take the exam, you have to know a lot about each species of bird. You have to know about certain diseases and medicines that will help the bird, along with all the state and federal regulations. So I just, and they're very strict. So I just didn't know what I was getting into and how it was going to go. My sponsor kept reassuring me. So I set up a time and waited for him to arrive. When he arrived, he came and was quite friendly, the game warden, and was actually quite casual. He wasn't, he wasn't like trying to flunk me or anything. He was being quite encouraging and just wanted to make sure everything was apropos, kosher, copacetic. He actually knew my sponsor, and I think that helped a little bit because he was reassured that I had a good sponsor who was making sure that I was going through the process. So he walked through everything, looked at the area, and said things looked fine. And it was, I hate to say it, but a little bit uneventful, other than, I was relieved that he was pleased with what I had. Let's see. So basically what he did is he went out in my front yard, set up my picnic table, and got his laptop out and started filling out papers. And about halfway through, he stopped and looked at me and went, wait a minute. Did you have a water pan in that mew? I went, yes, I did. He's like, you did? I'm like, yeah. He goes, okay, yeah, okay. And he didn't go back and check, you believe me, but that was my one little bug-eyed moment for just a minute, but everything was fine. I passed, and he filled out the paperwork, and then I had to wait for my falconry permit to arrive before I could even consider the next step, which was to trap a bird. So I tried to wait very patiently. I think it took about a week and a half. I don't know. I don't really remember, but I know it seemed like forever. And then the day arrived, and I got it, and suddenly it was all official, and I'd gone through everything, and I'm like, this started back in February. I had friends who were like, you really did this? I was like, yeah, I did, And not to sound too corny or anything, but it's a 6,000-year-old tradition, And I suddenly went, I'm part of that, There's something, and I really look forward to getting my first bird. I guess I should say there are all kinds of falconers, and again, not good. I don't mean anyone's better than the other as long as they're taking care of their bird and have the proper procedures. But as far as their philosophy, there are guys who are just intense hunters, and they like getting out there and the idea of I won't say killing something, but the pursuit and the like. I understand that, I really do. And there's some of us, and maybe they feel this way too. This is maybe I'm not trying to be exclusionary. But I know that I talk to certain falconers who go, it's not about killing a rabbit or killing a squirrel. I mean, the bird has to eat and the like. But I'm kind of along for the ride. And it's about appreciating the pursuit and the skill that it takes for the bird of prey to catch something. Because certainly, you may think that this hawk or this eagle or this falcon is just diving down right and left and catching things and stuff in its face. But many more times they miss their prey than actually catch the prey. So to see their effort and the passion the bird has and the fierceness that it has as it's pursuing its prey, there is for me, in listening to them, and it's what I was wanting to, I hope to experience when I get my bird, is that sense of oneness with nature, that there is a spirit and a consciousness in that being, in that animal, and watching it do what it does, and it accepting me to go along doing what it's do, because it's doing exactly what it's going to do for the rest of its life, whether I'm there or not, right? And it just trusts me enough to let me come along and help it out and beat the bushes for it. I mean, that's basically what I am. I'm a bird dog, is what I understand. And the idea of not having that philosophy of the conqueror, but the idea of becoming one with something as opposed to conquering it, so to speak. I don't know. I'm getting kind of weird there, I guess, but that's George. So anyhow, upward and onward. I'm looking forward. Now that I have my permit, I've just got to start badgering my sponsor to get me out there and find one. Upward and onward.
Thanks again for listening to Exploring the Ozarks. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our social media channels to help us keep exploring the stories of the Ozarks. If you're looking for more ways to support our show, we have sponsorships for businesses and Patreon for individual supporters. Check the links in the description for more details. Thanks for your support, and keep exploring the Ozarks.